Hey guys, good morning. Thank you for tapping in for some real talk from the heart this morning. Daily devotions through the Bible. Reading through the Bible twice per year, 7 chapters per day. It's about an hour of reading. I'm coming on here and doing a short devotion from one of the chapters. And this morning's real talk is from Micah chapter 7, the first 9 verses. And I want to read verse 7 and then just kind of launch into the devotion this morning. So, verse 7 says, "Therefore I will look to Yahweh, I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me." Now, Micah was called by the Lord from his home to be a prophet. And the Lord sent Micah to Jerusalem to deliver a stern warning of judgment about his impending judgment that would come because they had chosen to live in sin. And what I want to talk to you about this morning is, when life's all wrecked, as we see here in the southern kingdom of Judah, what was the cause? What was the cause for all the mess, right, and all the drama and the impending judgment? Well, it was sin, right? Let's just be real, man. Sin messes things up, man. Sin messes life up. When sin is having its way in the life of a nation, which we're of course seeing in our nation here in America, man, sin is having its way, man. There are things that are evident, and I believe they're revealed right here in these first 9 verses in the southern kingdom of Judah. And so the first thing I want you to see here is in verse 2. In verse 2 it says, "The faithful man has perished from the earth, and there is no one upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. Every man hunts his brother with a net." And so the first thing that you see when sin is having its way in a nation and is causing it to be just all wrecked is that man is loyal to himself. Man, he's loyal to nobody but himself. He's a lover of self. The next thing you see here when sin is having its way in the life of a nation is that mankind become what I call selfish haters. You see that right there at the end. It says, "They all lie in wait for blood. Every man hunts his brother with a net." And just a nation full of selfish haters, man. And no doubt that's what we're seeing in America today, man. People are so selfish, and they hate anybody and everybody who doesn't agree with their agenda, with their mindset, and they just become all, disgruntled and have animosity and just hold ill will towards people who don't agree with their debauchery and their sinfulness and immorality. We're seeing that. Why? Because sin is having its way in the nation. And what is it causing? It's causing life to be all wrecked. The next thing I want to see here is in verse 3. In verse 3 it says, "That they may successfully do evil." That they may successfully do evil with their hands. The princes ask for gifts, the judges seeks a bribe, and the great man utters his evil desire. So they scheme together. And so what you see here is that mankind is successfully living evil. Man, when sin is having its way in the nation, man is successfully living evil. They're scheming together, as it says there in that verse. The next thing I want you to see here, right, that when sin is having its way in a nation, right, and it's causing life to be all wrecked, it's found in verse 4. Look in verse 4 now. It says, "The best of them is like a briar, the most upright is a sharper than a thorn hedge. The day of your watchman and your punishment comes. Now shall be their perplexity." The word perplexity is an interesting word. It means the inability to make sense of what's going on. Right? We're seeing that, man. We're seeing the confusion. The world is filled with perplexity. The nation, our country, is filled with perplexity. You hear it all the time, man. You see these mass shootings. You see these sexual predators, and you see all this stuff going on, man. Massive thievery and people out of their minds on drugs. And then people ask the question, man, what in the world is going on? Right? There's a confusion. There's a perplexity setting in. Well, we know what's going on. Sin is having its way. Sin is having its way. God has given people over to themselves. People have rejected God. They pushed God out of their minds. They took him out of schools. They took him out of the institutions, out of the center of the nation. God's been removed. Secularism, humanism has come in. And now instead of worshiping the creator, right, they worship created things. And man's just given over to that. And so sin is having its way, and it's causing life to be all wrecked. And perplexity has set in, and man is wondering what in the world is going on. Confusion's going on, right? And life is wrecked because sin is having its way. Verses 5 and 6 give you the next mark of a nation that sin is having its way. Verses 5 and 6. Notice this: do not trust in a friend. Do not put your confidence in a companion. Guard the doors of your mouth for her who lies in your bosom. Verse 6, for son dishonors father. Daughter rises up against her mother. Daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own household. When sin is having its way, in a nation, it messes up family relationships. It brings chaos to the home, to the family. Right now, if you look at the statistics in America, the majority of kids, over half the kids in America are being raised by single parents, usually by a single mom, right? They're being raised in a home where there's no father figure in the home. There's no one to set the example and lead the way, especially in the ways of God, right? And in a single parent home, it's pretty hard. You look at statistics, man, and I think it's something like 55% in many of the towns, single parent homes, man. It's crazy when you think about it. Kids are being raised by one parent, and over 600,000 are being raised by no parents at all. Man, they're stuck in the foster care system. And so I do a Bible study on Mondays in the hospital, behavioral health, the behavioral health ward in the hospital. I go in there every Monday and I give a Bible study. And just a few weeks ago, I was sitting with a group of about 14 people, and I asked them, I said, how many of you were raised in foster care? And over 90% of the people that are suffering with mental illness and that are in the behavioral health system, over 90% of them raised their hand and said, I was raised a foster kid. I am a victim. Listen, this is what they said. I am a victim of my parents' addiction. Man, sin is having its way in our nation, man, and it's causing life to be all wrecked. Now, what I want to get to here and close this devotion is in verse 7. It's the verse that I started with. And I love what the prophet Micah, and again, Micah's name means who is like Yahweh. Man, I love that. Micah means who is like Yahweh. This man of God, the prophet, man, and all this mess that's going on around him in Judah, right, in Jerusalem, this is what Micah decides to do. Instead of being focused on all the wreck that life is and all the mess that life is because sin is having its way, Micah does this. Look at verse 7. He says, therefore, right, in other words, because of that, I will look to the Lord. I'm not going to be focused on the mess and the drama and all the chaos and confusion. He says, I'm not going to focus on that. He says, I'm going to look to the Lord. And then he says this, and I will wait for the God of my salvation. I want you to see that. So the first thing Micah does is he looks to the Lord. The second thing he says is, I'm going to wait for the Lord. And the third thing he does, he says, and my God will hear me, which means he's going to pray. He's not going to complain about the conditions of the world or his nation. He says, I am going to pray. He says, my God will hear me. And the fourth thing I want you to see that Micah does is found in verse 9. Let me read it to you. He says, I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him. And so the fourth thing Micah does is that he owns his own sin before the Lord. You know, the deception of it all is that when we see the world living in sin and we see a world given over to sin, that we ignore the sin in our own life. And what Micah does here is he says, you know what, man, I'm going to own my own sin before God. Listen, the beginning of a fixed life is owning our own sin before God. And saying, God, you know, woe is me, right? Woe is me. That's what Isaiah did in chapter 6. And if this nation is going to get fixed, man, if this wreck of a life that this nation is going through right now, it's going to begin with owning our own sin before God, man, and repenting before God of our sin, or there will be no fix to our nation. As long as this nation continues on in its stubborn pride and it's shaking its fist at God saying, we will not have you to rule over us, there's two things that are going to happen. There's going to be a fall and there's going to be desolation. Read it in the scriptures, man. Those are the two things that happen to a nation that forgets its God. It falls and it falls into desolation. Not only can that happen on a national scale, but listen, it can happen on an individual scale as well. If you and I will not repent, man, the fall will come and the desolation will set in. Hey, the Lord loves you. I love you too, man. Praying for you. Please be praying for me. Hope you have a great Wednesday. Hey, listen, if you're in the area, I'm starting the book of Ecclesiastes tonight. I'll be teaching Ecclesiastes chapter 1 tonight at Calvary Chapel, Toppenish, 408 West 6th Avenue, 7 o'clock tonight. If you want to watch online, I'll be live at 7 o'clock on Facebook. So, man, I hope you can join the study, Ecclesiastes 1. All right, man, salute. God bless y'all.